Willie Nelson finally speaks up at the age of 9 concerning John Denver. Willie Nelson was Willie Hugh Nelson was born on April 29, Abbott, Texas, 1933. Growing up with his grandparents in the midst of the Great Depression following his parents' divorce and departure from in pursuit of employment, young Willie created early passion for music. His grandparents loved music themselves and supported his ability by presenting him with his first guitar when he was 6. At 7 years old, he had composed his very first song. By 9 o'clock he was already participating in a local dance performance, hallways, and honky-tonks, in addition to his Barbie, a sister who played the piano, a collaboration that would last tell of their lives. When Nelson was a young adult, he worked at a variety of odd tasks, including vacuum sales and disc jockeying, tape farming, and selling Bibles, while he intending to establish himself in the country. Music is quite competitive. Scene. He had a difficult time in the 1950s, alternating between Fort Worth and other cities. Nashville and Portland are always pursuing his dream, despite the fact that his distinctive singing speech and unusual wording were initially perceived as being inconsistent with he continued with a refined Nashville sound, and he started to unlock doors with his songs. Songs like Crazy, which Patty made famous, Funny How Time 90 and Cleaner Slips Away displayed his lyrical sensibilities and brought him fame. As an accomplished lyricist, the 1970s were a time when starting Willie Nelson's ascent to superstar status. I'm annoyed by the limitations of the Nashville recording sector. He returned to Texas and became an outlaw country pioneer. Movement that disapproved of the glossy commercial production method of mainstream nation in preference to a raw, more rebellious, and intimate approach. Among his seminal albums are Shotgun Willie, Red-Headed Stranger, 1973, 1975, and Stardust, 1978. Confirmed his reputation as a musical innovator as well as a cultural trailblazer. Red-Headed Stranger's success, featuring the eerie song Blue Eyes Weeping in the Rain, demonstrated that storytelling and genuineness could continue to touch and sell millions of records. Heart of all generations. Past his Willie Nelson's songs gained recognition for his unique character, his lengthy bandana, aged face, braided hair, trigger, the ubiquitous guitar, which itself came to represent his perseverance and fashion. It wasn't only the picture though, it was the man who did it. Nelson Willie represented the free-spirited, compassionatable, not hesitant to voice their opinions on contentious topics. He's been ardent supporter of farmers' rights, legalization of marijuana, animal welfare, and sustainability of the environment. He co-founded Farm Aid in 1985 with John Mellenchamp and Neil Young. An official performance that keeps raising for Americans and neat farmers. His spirit of cooperation is. Throughout the years, Willie Nelson captured a remarkable range of musicians from many genres, including one Johnny Cash, Merle Haggard, and Jennings Sherrill, Dolly Parton, and Ray Charles Crow, Norah Jones, and Snoop Dogg. His The Highwaymen, a supergroup including Cash, Chris Christopherson, and Jennings, into array of friendship and excellence in music. His capacity to cross the borders of genres while preserving his essential self is evidence of his widespread appeal. Despite individual struggles such as financial difficulties, unhappy marriages, in court cases involving the IRS, knelt intact. He didn't stop recording, performing, or promoting what he held to be true. Even into his 80s and the 1990s, he put out new tracks, published autobiographies, and carried on putting up a live performance while working non-stop ethic that is ageless. His tone, warm but weathered, it stays immediately as identifiable as his philosophical, soulful outlook on life and music. Willie Nelson is more than just a nation-star of music. He is an asset to the country, a poet, narrator, and representation of resilience. His musical contributions in society cannot be measured. Using a discography encompassing more than 100 albums, having a history that has impacted numerous artists, he has merited each and every Canadian received recognition from the Grammy Awards. Center recognition and admission into the Hall of Fame for country music. Over and above that, he has merited the affection that will last and admiration from admirers everywhere. Despite being 80 years old, Willie Nelson has kept going against the grain and pushing the limits of what constitutes a performing music at a later age. His enthusiasm, inventiveness, and enthusiasm for music has remained incredibly powerful, inspiring younger generations of both fans and artists. Just before his 81st birthday in 2014, Nelson published a highly regarded Band of Brothers as the title of the studio album. This document represented a noteworthy significant event in his career, not just due to his advanced age, but also because it was his first album to be released in a number of years, consist primarily of fresh, original content. Nelson wrote it himself. The recordist played a fusion of traditional country sounds with his unique poetic complexity and narrative, garnering recognition for its unadulterated honesty and maturity contemplation. It struck a deep chord with both ardent admirers and detractors, who lashed out as a comeback to the famous songwriter and singer. Even more, Band of Brothers made a spectacular debut, ranked first on the Billboard top ranking of country albums, confirming his ongoing significance and appeal and dynamic landscape of country music. The popularity of the CD demonstrated that age had nothing to lessen Nelson's ability or his capacity to engage audience with his distinctive voice and heartfelt laying a guitar. In addition to music, Willie Nelson has also made a lasting impression on the television and movie industries throughout the years. He has changed smoothly, moving from recording studios to movie sets, becoming known as a calming and effortless on-screen persona. He has made appearances in numerous roles in movies that highlight not just his musical heritage, as well as his distinct wit and charm. Among his most enduring appeared in the 1979 motion picture that he starred in Electric Horseman. With Jane Fonda and Robert Redford. Nelson had a supporting part in Whitcomb and Heart and Comedy, and he also contributed to the soundtrack of the movie, further combining his musical compositions with cinematic abilities. In the family movie Starlight from 1996, Nelson enchanted crowds with a kin position as a grandfather that emphasized his kin disposition and won him a devoted following. Person that transcends generations. His humorous time and easygoing disposition as well making him an ideal choice for parts in comedy and light-hearted movies. In the 2005 movie The Dukes of Hazzard, adaptation of the beloved television show, Nelson played the part of Uncle Jesse. This enabled him to introduce his rustic Texas identity and trademark in relation to the large screen. He also left a lasting impression. Appearance in the 2007 film Blonde Ambition, a Jessica in a romantic comedy Simpson, in which he performed a role thought enhanced genuineness and southern flavor to the narrative. His capacity to prod his self-satisfaction was further demonstrated in Zoolander 2, a satirical fashion comedy in 2016. He made a brief visit that pleased viewers and highlighted his ongoing cultural significance. These Willie's film roles have contributed to his in addition to being a legend in music. Nelson also a well-liked figure in pop culture with uncommon appeal to all generations. His sustained engagement in the music and he worked in the film industry well into his 80s. Evidence of his unwavering passion, tenacity and creative spirit, a legacy that is hard to match. Willie Nelson, the famous American National Legendary musician whose career has included more than 60 years, has led a profound, vibrant and exciting personal life, especially in relation to his family and connections. He's been married 4 times over the years. Every marriage symbolizes a distinct phase of his life, and considering theatrical's changes and evolution viewpoints that mirrored his music. His first spouse was in 1952, Martha Matthews. Even though this union lasted for a whole decade, was characterized by instability. In his memoirs, Nelson has been open and honest concerning the rough and occasionally violent character of the partnership, driven bias, drinking and his erratic behavior early career in music. In tandem, Willie and 3 children were born to Martha, Lana, Susie, Billy, Hugh Nelson Jr. and Willie. Unfortunately, Billy, their son, would eventually pass away in 1991 by suicide, a devastating Willie's life at a point that profoundly impacted him and that he has mirrored over the years with honesty and anguish. After the breakdown of his initial, Willie married Shirley, a singer Carly, in 1963. That partnership started out as a creative collaboration. Shirley was a nation singer herself and worked with on music in the early 1960s. Nelson, but the marriage disbanded in 1971. Shirley found out that Willie had secretly had a child with someone else, Connie Kupka, a woman, during their This insight resulted in the conclusion of their marriage and hinted at his upcoming connection. Kupka, Connie, Willie's mother Paula, Colin Nelson, the daughter, became soon later. He took a third wife. They married in 1971 and had a child later on, Lee Nelson's daughter. Connie got up. Through Nelson at some of his most turbulent years in the music business and throughout his conflicts with the IRS and problems with drugs. In spite of their common past and the birth of 2 daughters, the union finally took place, ending in 1988. Later that year, Annie D'Angelo, a wife of Willie Nelson, he had met the cosmetics artist at the production of the 1986 motion picture Stagecoach, where he co-starred with both Johnny Cash and Christopherson. Annie provided a feeling of equilibrium and serenity to Willie's world is frequently chaotic. She's frequently referred to as a grounding involvement in his life, supporting his adoption, a more healthful way of living, which includes cutting back on his alcohol intake and meat. They have 2 sons together. Lucas Autry Nelson has been a follower of father's musical heritage and accomplished at acclaim as Lucas Nelson's frontman Mika and the promise of the real Nelson, a musician and artist in his independently renowned for his varied and style that is adventurous. Willie and Anya stayed together for more than 3 decades, which is his longest lasting marriage, and representing a profoundly lasting friendship that has become more solid over time. Over the past few years, Willie and Annie has established themselves on the where they reside is on the Hawaiian island of Maui, quite isolated, encircled by luxuriant tropical landscape, close companions, and relatives. Their house acts as a tranquil getaway from the rigors of notoriety in traveling. It's not merely a location of relaxation but a representation of the peace in his older years he has discovered life. Although several sources might her name is sometimes reported as Marie, Annie D'Angelo is actually his wife, and the two have a solid long-lasting relationship founded on love and respect for one another. All in, Willie Nelson has fathered 7 children in all. Children in all of these partnerships, each signifying a distinct facet of the fabric of life, in spite of the fluctuations, the individual aces, as well as the lessons learned. Nelson has stayed steadfastly committed to his family, frequently finding motivation for his music from them. His relatives, members, his kids in particular, were essential to his personal and career, and a lot of people have carried on his creative legacy and artistic manifestation. Well into his Willie, a legendary country icon from the 1990s, life has been as abundant and as intricate as the American terrain. He sings about a lot. From the outlaw country, Nelson's career in gospel and blues has lasted for more than 70 years, and he has encountered a few of the most significant personalities in the history of music. However, among the array of names that have characterized his life, one name about which admirers have long conjectured drowning but Nelson has hardly ever publicly discussed, is that of fellow American singer-songwriter and adored John Denver as a folk icon now, at an uncommon and sincere moment of Willie Nelson, vulnerability and candor, has finally revealed herself at the age of 92, regarding his recollections, feelings, and enduring reflections on the deceased Denver, offering a heartfelt and uplifting glimpse into a friendship that was never fully visible to the public. Many admirers pondered for years how Nelson genuinely thought of Denver. The two artists so occupied various but overlapping nooks and crannies of American music. Denver, along with his distinct voice and nature-inspired songs, was regarded as a representation of clear-cut, sincere hope in the 1970s. Nelson, braided, unadulterated, and firmly established in their harsher outlaw country textures, symbolized a spirit of rebellion. In spite of such apparent differences, Willie discloses that he had a strong appreciation for the musical by John Denver genuineness, poetic skill, and steadfast dedication to environment. Denver, according to Nelson, is a soul from the mountains that sung and meant it in its entirety. Willie continues how to mention that even if they didn't go on tour together or work together as often, as it may be assumed that there was always a and regard for one another, they frequently met at charitable events, television specials and concerts, particularly the ones from the late 1970s and in the early 1980s. Both men were supporting issues that struck a chord alongside them. Denver for environmental preservation and Nelson and wildlife for family farms as well as rural areas. Currently, Willie discloses that backstage at Ona for those occasions, the two had a thorough discussion of the demands of celebrity and remaining true to oneself in a world of industrial standards. John informed me that all he wanted to do was write what he was feeling and sing it truthfully, nor regardless of what LA or New York felt. That really got to me. Nelson remembers that Nelson also acknowledged Denver's impact on him was profound. Terrible passing in 1997 when the vocalist died in an aircraft accident off the coast of California. Back then, Willie kept quiet in public. However, he acknowledges in private that he lamented the loss of one of the softest voices in America. Now, considering the decades that have passed, he sees that the music from Denver is still moving, particularly tunes like Take Me Home, Sunshine, and Country Roads on Miss Holders. According to Willie, you can sense its affection in those tunes. They were never simply strikes, they were presents. During his speech, Nelson also discusses his perception of Denver's miss. He observes that whereas John was occasionally disregarded by detractors for being too emotional or gentle, the truth was Denver's power was found in his honesty and bravery to adhere to his heart. In this industry, people attempt to shape you into a different version of yourself. Don didn't allow that to occur. Willie says that requires courage. Quiet your guts. Having spent his own money, Willie Nelson life-challenging musical conventions and defending the principles he believes in maybe recognizes a little piece of himself in Denver's path. He considers that had they may have lived longer in Denver. Ultimately captured together, possibly a soft duet, combining their uniquenesses, honoring the land that they both cherished. Both of us were country guys, I thought, Nelson remarks with a longing grin. Perhaps different roots, but the identical horizon. Willie speaking up now, not only honoring a friend who passed away, but also provides a lesson in gratitude and reconciliation. 92 years old, living a long life, he reminds us of the tales that lie behind him, paying tribute to those who crossed our route, whether for a short while or a lifespan, is a component of meaning to the individual who created the music, and consequently, as the sun gradually sets on the outstanding career of Willie Nelson, thinking back on John Denver seems like a song in and of itself, delicate, unvarnished, and full with reality. A song that was maybe years of development, but was always awaiting a song, he noticed.